9.59 Ugandan shillings, approximately 170 Ugandan shillings, if we round off those figures there. Well, this was after yesterday's gain of 4.57 shillings, up to a price of 169.59 Ugandan shillings. This is a rise that comes at a time when MTN has been falling from the sky. That is, I'm talking about the share price, of course. MTN Uganda's share price started at 180 shillings, and in terms of year-to-date performance, they're still on a negative balance there, with a 5.78% shed off from their trading price in year-to-date performance counters. Now, when you look at also the monthly performance in the last 1 month, MTN Uganda has shed off at least 0.24%, because just exactly a month ago, the stock was trading around 170 Ugandan shillings. Getting to look at the 1 week performance, this is where we're seeing the improvement. In 1 week performance, MTN Uganda has gained 0.95%, indicating a big gain there for the company in terms of weekly and daily performance as per trade data yesterday. MTN Uganda is also currently the 4th most traded on stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange in the last quarter. In the last quarter, their volumes now are at 10.9 million shares, of course, adding the 2 million shares that they have traded yesterday. Currently, their value in this period has been 1.85 billion. That is the total turnover within the period, with an average of 172,385 shares traded. Let's look at some of the, financial statements from MTN. Of course, they have not released officially their audited financial statements for the year 2022. However, we anxiously await those after, of course, we read reports about their increase in profit in the year 2022. However, last year, MTN's lending grew to a tune of 401 billion. This is moving to within some commercial bank levels, which is quite an interesting statistic. Also, MTN disbursed this 401 billion worth of micro loans through 15.3 million applications in the period ended December 2022. This is according to details that were actually revealed by Mr. Richard Yego, who is MTN Mobile Money Managing Director. The details were part of a mini survey conducted by one of the papers here in Uganda, and had sought to understand the performance of the mobile money microcredit sector, which has become a key revenue earner for both mobile money companies as well as the third-party digital micro lenders. Mr. Yego indicated that during 2022, MTN's microloans segment had seen a big jump in both, of course, the volumes as well as the value, which returned to an increase of 91 billion Ugandan shillings worth of disbursed loans. For instance, data indicates that in 2021, MTN Uganda approved 3.8 million loans, and this was against about 310 billion Ugandan shillings worth of loans, just loans, 310 billion. This is what was disbursed. And however, the number of applications rose rapidly in the year 2022 to 15.3 million. Now, look at that, from 3.8 million to 15.3 million. That's over 500% increase in the total number of loans that were disbursed. Now, this is necessitating a rise in value to at least 401 billion, which we are currently talking about in the year 2022. This is a business that MTN began not so long ago, and this was before listing, of course, on the exchange, but it's contributing a huge amount of value to the company. Mobile money loans hold an interest rate, when you look at the interest rate of mobile money loans, between 8% and 10%. Majority have a 30-day repayment without the option of rolling over. However, the growth that MTN indicates is expected to continue this year, given that during the first quarter ended in March for 2023, there was more than 6.3 million applications for loans that had been approved, with a corresponding disbursement of at least 114 billion in just the first quarter of 2023. This is what we know so far from just the mobile money lending business that MTN is doing. You know, it's quite important when you're investing in a stock to look at it 360 degrees. Look at all their streams. Are they getting to increase in terms of the amount of income or the streams, the income streams that they're having currently, or they are getting to they're getting to actually decline in that line? Definitely something that you need to really look at as a shareholder within the company. Let's have a look at also the unsold shares that MTN was looking at actually getting to sell this year. Now, MTN says also that it is yet to float at least 7% shares that were not listed in the USE 2021 initial public offer. Remember, MTN came on board as an electronic IPO, or initial public offer, in 2021. During the initial public offer, they only sold out about 13% of the 20% offered shares and returned an undescribed IPO, which generated at least 530 billion Ugandan shillings, less than 2/3 of what was the target. That's how sad, the IPO was for MTN. At least over 2.9 billion shares were allotted out of the 4.5 billion that actually had been offered. You see, 2.9 billion shares were allotted out of the 4.5 billion. That's about, 60%. And then, although it was undersubscribed, IPO remains the largest USE has registered in its last 25-year history. It's still the biggest IPO we have ever had in Uganda, much as it was undersubscribed too. Now, speaking during a Facts Behind the Figures session hosted by USE in Nakawa, Kampala, Mrs. Slivia Molinge, the MTN Chief Executive Officer, by the way, she just took office after Mr. Wim van Helput left last year in August, and she's doing quite well at the company. The CEO continued to say that a listing of the unsold shares remained an obligation that the telecom was working on. And I will quote her. She said that we would like to see that all the 7% shares localized is finalized soon, so that we can have all the 20% shares listed. The 7% unsold shares, Mr. Andrew Bugembe, the Chief Financial Officer of MTN, also added, is currently held by MTN International, which holds at least now 83.05% stake. Now, during the period that MTN got listed, I'm looking at MTN here because it's one of the IPOs that fascinated me the most. Personally, I had never seen an electronic IPO where people could buy shares using their phones. People could buy shares and register for SCD accounts using their phones. And that was all brought by MTN Uganda. We're telling the story behind this. During the period ended in December 2022, MTN registered impressive performance driven by especially the mobile money pay, which grew threefold to over 173,400 merchants, while agents slightly fell by 0.5% to close 2022 at 166,229. MTN registered double-digit growth in data and fintech, with the revenue services growing at least 11.1% to 2.26 trillion. We are trying to analyze, is MTN worthy of investment, especially in the 7% unsold shares that they're getting to bring on board on the main board of the Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, when you look at the data revenue, it grew by 24%, and the fintechs grew by 24.9%. This is the year 2022. Earnings per share in 2022 for MTN Uganda increased by at least 19.3%, returning a price of 18.1 shillings per share. That was their earnings per share that were actually, given out. During the period, MTN declared a dividend payout in total of over 355.9 billion. Now, remember their IPO, when we look at their initial public offer, they had at least 530 billion. That's what they collected. But the dividend they gave out was over 355.9 billion, which is quite a good offer. This was effectively returning at least a yield of 8.9%. Now, Mrs. Molinge also noted that the telecom is currently investing in the network to meet licensing obligations under the National Telecom Operations Regime, which demands that the telecom should cover at least 90% of the country by 2025. The investments, she said, are mainly capital in nature, part of which will enhance the spectrum capacity to improve their customer digital experience and commercially launch the 5G network. Now, you're seeing the link between why MTN is looking at actually getting to list the remaining 7%, because remember, we have that 13% already listed, and according to the rules. Now, this is no longer about whether MTN wills or not. The rules are a national telecommunication company is supposed to list at least 20% of shares to the public exchange. And this is through an initial public offer. Of course, these are rules by the UCC, amended 2020. These are just new amendments that have come in the Communications Act. So it's a must. But they're giving justifications in that you're seeing MTN's projections, improved services, getting to launch the 5G network, improving connectivity, their data business is growing, their money lending, micro loan lending business is increasing, even to the size of a commercial bank. That's how serious MTN is. Now, MTN also indicated that in the year 2023, their focus is going to be on customer acquisition and rural coverage, as well as personalized bundles and price optimization, as well as data growth. Mrs. Mulenge also said, according in this event, that they are engaging regulators and other government stakeholders on issues such as establishing a proactive tax policy that supports the digital and financial inclusion to ensure reduction in the price entry level of smartphones and lessen the burden of the 0.5% tax that is instituted on mobile money withdrawals. So does MTN still deserve to actually gain more, stake from the public? And I think yes, the business is good. They have a very good business, and it's not about to stop growing. You're looking at the future with the 5G network, with the launch of the different mobile money credit, micro loans, the increase in the data services, covering 90% of the country by 2025. Very good business ahead. And so definitely profits could be on the way for MTN Uganda. They are a focused business, a business focused on the customer. They look at the customer needs and they try to address them. They try to address the problems the customer is facing currently in the market. And I think they'll do very good on the exchange this year, if at all things continue to be the way they are. All that is because, of course, of yesterday's gain. That's why we've just had a debrief of MTN Uganda. The stock is looking at listing the rest of the 7% shares. It listed 20% in the initial public offer that accrued a total of over 590 billion. And now they're looking at listing 7% more this year. And that's exactly what we should be looking up to. Airtel Uganda is another telecommunications company that is yet to list. Of course, like I said, now it's a rule. It is under the amendments of the Communications Act 2022 amended. And so Airtel was supposed to actually list last year, but due to the prevailing market conditions that were seemingly unfavorable for this company to list, they requested for a little bit more time. And definitely, we don't expect that time to go beyond 2023, honestly speaking. But let's watch the space and see. It would be a good thing to have them come on board and create some bit of competition on the market. And we have two telecommunications companies, more companies listing. Definitely will be in business. Let's get to look at Wumeme. Wumeme currently is at 405 shillings after gaining 5 shillings yesterday. And yes, the stock continues to rally. The Uganda Securities Exchange, now with a market capitalization of 658 billion Ugandan shillings. This company is now the 7th most valuable on the Uganda Securities Exchange with a current 405.0 Ugandan shillings price per share. Now, yesterday they saw a pretty small volume, just about 2,975 shares, and accrued a total of at least 1.2 million Ugandan shillings in turnover. However, the company's stock continues to be one of the biggest and the most celebrated stocks on the Uganda Securities Exchange in 2023, with a gain of 1.25% weekly, monthly gain of 24.9%, a 3-month gain of 35%, 6 months gain of 103%, and a 1-year gain of 88.1%. Pretty awesome performance from Wumeme Limited. Now, the stock, of course, got more attention during the end of 2022. In December, they came out and announced that they will be exiting Uganda in 2025 after the expiration of their concession with government of Uganda to be the distributors and suppliers of electricity in Uganda. Now, following that, of course, many investors we would have expected could have shunned the stock. However, more investors flocked in. The demand, of course, went up. Supply was much, much more limited. And guess what? The stock price started rising. MTN Uganda, to make things better or worse, depending on which angle you're viewing it from, announced their dividend this year. The dividend payout is going to be at 63.9 Ugandan shillings per share, which is one of the highest we've seen so far on the exchange for a single share. A shareholder getting back over 63.9 Ugandan shillings. That, of course, attracted more attention, and the stock even picked up further, and the price rose to the current heights. The price has not stopped rising. We are now at currently 405 Ugandan shillings per share. MTN Wumeme will be holding their annual general meeting this year on the 18th of May, and that will be also live on their online platforms. You can also follow up on Zoom and get to witness the unveiling of their financial results officially to the shareholders, and also the app that dividend. Moving on, in summary, those were the biggest movers of the market and the day. The Uganda Securities Exchange All-Share Index moved up consequent of the good performance of those stocks I just mentioned, MTN Uganda, Jubilee Holdings, as well as Wumeme, and it moved to 5.62 points, up to 1,122.03 points. And this is a 1-week loss of kindly 0.09%, which is currently getting to reduce, and 4-week losses of at least 1.05%. And that's the trading, my friend, from the Uganda Securities Exchange. And you can trade on the Uganda Securities Exchange by opening an SCD account. SCD stands for Securities Central Depository. When you open that account, the rest is history. You can get in touch with the stockbroker who is licensed and start your journey of investment with the Uganda Securities Exchange. Let's move on to Nairobi. Have a look at a summary here. Nairobi Securities Exchange traded at least about 46 equities, and on the day that saw 13 gainers and 25 losers. Scan Group led the gainers with a 9.89% appreciation, whereas the CIC Insurance Group had a gain of 8.09%, and Williamson T Kenya continued to rally the market at a 9.41% gain. The biggest mover of the day was actually this time Kenya Power and Lighting Company with a 1.3 million shares volume, with Safaricom coming in the second place at 937,800 shares traded. Regarding the performance of the NSE shares index, the NSE All-Share Index at least went down by 1.11 points, down to 106.52 points on the exchange. And that's the trading, my friend, from the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Can't wait, of course, for that moment when we have an integrated East African capital market where we can have, of course, a one-stop center for all our trade demands and our trade needs. That will definitely bring convenience and make trading much better on the East African markets. You can also follow up with that. African Development Bank is spearheading that project for the integration of the East African market so that we remove the barriers and have a very open market, which will help our companies grow. It will help our securities markets as well get to improve there on the East African land. Let's cross over to the Wall Street in the United States. Now, U.S. stocks stumbled on Tuesday as the fallout of the First Republic Bank's failure continued to hit the bank stocks again, and the Federal Reserve began its two-day meeting. Now, the S&P 500 fell 1.48% downwards during the midday trading, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbled more than 400 points, or at least a quarter, 1.4%. And the technology-heavy Nasdaq Composite dropped 1.24% at exactly about 12:40 p.m. Eastern Time. The government bonds slumped. A fresh data that is from the Labor Department showing that the labor market continues to cool off. And the yield on the 10-year Treasury note was down 3.4%, and the 2-year note fell by 3.9%. The regulators took possession of the First Republic Bank that was sold and sold the bulk of its interest of its assets to mostly JP Morgan Chase, resulting in the third failure of an American bank since the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank and the Signature Bank in March. That's it, my friend. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can find more information on our website at www.smart24tv.com and get to follow us on Twitter at Smart24 TV. My name is Anthony Sabale. Remember to check out Altex East Africa. Simply dial *292# to experience the magic at Altex and buy treasury bonds in East Africa. No hassle, and you get, of course, to possess your money and possess your future. With Altex East Africa, you're doing something new, because with as little as 15,000, you can invest in treasury bonds and exchange traded funds on the East African treasury bonds in Uganda, in Kenya, and in Tanzania. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you tomorrow, same time, same place. Remember to stay tuned. More business coming your way. Bye for now.
Smart24, driving business.